16 years ago, on September 16th, my father passed away in a fatal car accident. And over the next 3 years, my brother and I went through a nasty probate process that cost way more than we ever expected it to. It took a whole lot longer than we ever expected it to. We had to go through the process of shutting down businesses and dealing with ex-spouses and ex-girlfriends and attorneys and all kinds of things. And it's not something we'd ever wish on anybody. And so one of my passions is to keep people from having to go through this, and that's something that we do, is help people to go through a lot of these estate planning mistakes that my brother and I dealt with when my father passed away. And it wasn't because of poor planning, it was because of poor implementation. The planning can be great, but you got to make sure you implement things correctly. And so let's go through the 8 mistakes that people commonly make with estate planning and how to overcome those. And please make sure to stay along to the end, because some of the worst mistakes we're going to save to the end. So when we're going through this, please feel free to put up your thumbs and subscribe to the channel, and we'll get right into it. So the first mistake that a lot of people make is just never ever getting started. People don't get off the starting line, and some people would say that you need to fish or cut bait. And so we've got a no fishing sign here, and so they don't want you fishing around the ducks. But we want to make sure that we get off the starting line and we just get started. And one thing that my father failed to do is he failed to get my stepmother involved in the estate planning process. So you want to make sure you got your spouse involved. So include your spouse. If you don't include your spouse, it may be that he or she doesn't buy into what you're trying to do. It may be that a lot of things that you're trying to accomplish never get implemented, all because he or she just isn't on board. And if you can't get your spouse on board, then you're already starting out way behind. You're getting started, but you're so far behind you can never catch up with where you want to be. So you want to make sure you get your spouse involved and make sure they buy in to what you're trying to accomplish. And of course, you may want to consider trust. Now, not everybody needs trust. We've done other videos on why you may not need a trust and how you can do things without trust. But trusts are very beneficial for people, especially if you've got property in multiple states, if you've got business interests, if you've got a more complicated estate, and also if you've got children from multiple marriages. If you've got children from multiple marriages, you want to make sure that you protect your kids, and it also protect your spouse. But protect your spouse, make sure that you have money for him or her if you were to pass away. Make sure that you have everything set up so that he or she doesn't have to worry about things. We know a lot of people where the husband knows everything, and a lot of couples where the wife knows everything, and the husband would be completely lost if the wife passed away. And so it happens both ways. But you want to protect your spouse, have everything set up so your spouse doesn't have to worry about things, and also your kids don't have to worry about things. A lot of times when one spouse passes away, especially if it's a second or third marriage, there's kids that are from the previous marriages, and it may be that your current spouse really loves your kids, but your spouse usually doesn't love your kids as much as they love their kids. And so you want to make sure that you have that money left over for your kids, because no matter how much your spouse loves your kids, it may be that down the road, say 10 years down the road, he or she is saying, well, I never hear from Sally or Johnny or whoever. I'm just going to change all the beneficiaries over so my kids get everything. And you'd be surprised how often that happens. It happens a lot. So you want to make sure to protect your kids. Moving on, we also want to make sure that we implement the plan. A lot of times people will go to a great attorney. My father went to a very well-regarded, good attorney here in town, got all these plans put together, got all the papers put together, and they were just like blueprints. They're like blueprints for building a house. And when you get the blueprints done, do you have a house? No, you don't have a house until you build it. So you've got to hire a contractor to build the house. So after you get your plans done, hire a contractor to implement the plan. Hire an expert to implement the plan. So you want to make sure that you hire an expert, and that expert has done this many times before, has made sure that they have done everything, make sure that you've done everything you need to do so that your plan works. Because a lot of times these attorneys, they get paid more the more nasty it gets at the end. So they'll do the plan for you, and then they don't implement anything. They just give you your instructions. If they do that, they'll give you instructions as to what you're supposed to do. And if you do it, you might be good. But a lot of people don't follow these instructions. A lot of people don't do what they're supposed to do after the fact to make sure that everything's set up right. Just look up Michael Jackson, for example. That was a nasty, nasty situation, and it's all public record, and lots of stories have been written about that. But with my father, he wasn't able to implement the plan, mostly because my stepmother wasn't involved. There were several trusts that didn't get funded, and for that reason, there were lots and lots of hours that attorneys billed after the fact. Took about 3 years, tens of thousands of dollars just in probate expenses, not to mention expenses dealing with the ex-girlfriend and other things like that. So please make sure to hire an expert so you don't have to deal with all this on the back end, or your loved ones don't have to deal with all this on the back end, because it's no fun. A lot of times people want to make sure they get all this estate planning done after they've dealt with this stuff with their parents or their other loved ones, because it's gotten so nasty, and says, I don't want this ever to happen with my kids. And that's, of course, what my wife and I did, is we did this for our kids so all this stuff wouldn't happen for them. So we just got to make sure to implement the plan. So we also want to look at selecting good trustees. Are the trustees going to follow through on your wishes? Of course, you're going to be your own trustees at first, and then your spouse may be a trustee after you're gone. And then sometimes people name kids, sometimes people name a friend. And you got to make sure they've got a backbone. So if you name one kid to be trustee for the other kids, and you've got another kid that wants to spend money all the time, a lot of times they're afraid to say no, and this one kid is just spending money like wild, and it causes all kinds of issues. And so you want to make sure that whoever you name as a trustee is able to enforce the law or enforce your wishes, so that if you've got a child that isn't that responsible, that they don't run roughshod over the other child that's a trustee. And so it may be you want to have a backup trustee. So a lot of people will call that a corporate trustee, that will handle things, and they'll be able to uphold what the trust says, and they'll be able to say no to your irresponsible kid, the one that's not so responsible with money. So please make sure to look at who you name as the trustees, and have backup trustees, have backup executors, things of that nature. It's always good to make sure you do that. And also make sure you have the beneficiary set up correctly on the retirement plans. Sometimes you may want to name the trustee as the beneficiary. We can cover that in another video. So also we want to make sure that we provide detailed instructions. I had a friend whose father passed away not long after my father passed away, and he also had a stepmother. And his stepmother did not want him to come into the house, or his sister to come into the house after his father passed away and pick up any of these mementos or things that had a lot of sentimental value after the fact. And she put up absolutely everything. She put up everything for sale in an estate sale. And so he wasn't allowed to come in the house, and his sister wasn't allowed to come in the house. So I actually went through and I bought some things, and I called him up to see if he wanted something. It turns out his wife went through and bought some things for him too, because he wasn't allowed to come in the house. It was just a nasty situation. And you don't want this to happen with your kids, or anything close to that happen with your kids. I remember when my dad passed away, the same day he passed away, someone broke into the house and took a bunch of stuff, and took some jewelry, rummaged through papers and all kinds of things. We did not know everything that was taken until after the fact, because we found a DVD where Dad had gone through the house and he had recorded everything for insurance purposes, and that was how we could determine what was taken from the house. And so it may be good for you to put together what's called a personal property memorandum, where you list what you want to go to who. And so it's something that you can have. You can list it in the will. You can change the personal property memorandum as much as you want. You don't have to change the will to change that. And it holds up in a court of law. And I would seriously consider one of these personal property memorandums. I would seriously consider having a letter of instruction that's like a treasure map to share with your kids where you want everything to go. And so that's almost everything. But I want to say the most important thing that you want to do is make sure, once you have trust, is you've got to fund the trust. Have an expert help you fund the trust. Have an expert help you get everything implemented. If you don't, it's kind of like going on a trip and not packing your bags. So let's say you're going to go on a trip, say you're going to go down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, you got a place down there, and you have your bags set on the bed. You call up your friend Sam, you tell Sam, hey, I forgot to pack my bags. Why don't you go in the house, you pack my bags for me, just go in I've got some stuff in the bedroom, I've got some in the dresser, I got some stuff in the closet, I've got some stuff in the bathroom, just go ahead and pack everything for me. And Sam meets you at the airport, gives you your bags, you fly down to Fort Lauderdale, you get in your place down in Fort Lauderdale, you open your bags. What are the chances you're going to have what you want in your bags? The chances are you're not going to have everything you want because you had somebody else pack your bags. And that's exactly what a lot of people do with their estate planning, is they let something happen after the fact. They either set up the trust through the will or set up the trust and they don't fund the trust, and someone's left to pack their bags for them. Don't let that be you. So if you like these videos, please feel free to put your thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. That's all we have for today. As always, stay thirsty for knowledge, and we'll catch up with you later.